My name is Deanne Lee. I am the East Texas Regional Advocacy Director for Raise Your Hand Texas. The future of Texas, our economy, communities, and citizenry depends on how well we prepare our students today. All students deserve a level playing field and equal access to a quality public education regardless of their zip code. We believe the future of Texas is in our public schools, and tonight's purpose is to allow you the opportunity to know where each candidate stands on public education issues. Raise Your Hand Texas is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that was founded to advance public education. We are coordinating a series of forums across the state in the weeks leading up to the March 5th primary and again in November. We are grateful to Dr. Dina Stever, Superintendent of Sulphur Springs ISD, for assisting in the preparation of this forum. Please stand and join two of our local students in the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge. The students are Grant Glass and Isabel Hardy.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
I would like to thank tonight's timekeeper, Laura Colby, owner of the Magic Scoop Ice Cream Shop and General Store on Sulphur Springs Square. Laura and her husband Adam live in Cumbie and have been an active part of Hopkins County for 9 years. I would now like to introduce the moderator for tonight's forum, Butch Burney, President and CEO of the Hopkins County Chamber. Mr. Burney, a native of Hopkins County, is the President and CEO, as I said, of the Hopkins County Chamber of Commerce. Butch is a graduate of Sulphur Springs High School and Sul Ross State University. Butch is currently on the Wildcat Hall of Honor Committee and the Hopkins County Civic Center Board of Directors. He has served as chairman on the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors and served in many capacities in youth sports and civic organizations. He is married to Karen, a graduate of Como-Picton High School and Paris Junior College's School of Nursing, where she received her RN degree. They have 4 children and 5 grandchildren. Candidates, thank you for being here. It is time. Mr. Burney, you may begin.
I'm delighted to moderate this evening's forum. Before we begin, let's review a few forum rules. Please silence your electronics. As a matter of courtesy, this event is being recorded and will be posted on various platforms. Audience members are asked to refrain from applause or any other signs of approval or disapproval during the forum. We will show our gratitude once the forum is concluded. Also, campaign materials are not to be distributed anywhere except at the candidates' designated tables in the forum. The candidates for Texas House District 2 are seated in alphabetical order. The candidates will give opening remarks for up to 3 minutes in order from left to right. The speaking order for candidates' answers to questions will alternate, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer. Our timekeeper will raise signs to let us know how much time is left. The yellow sign indicates that 30 seconds remain, and the red sign indicates the time is up. Candidates are asked to please stop promptly when your time is up. Candidates, please respond directly to questions and talk about your own positions, not those of the other candidate. Please do not interrupt the other candidate or attempt to engage them when you are speaking. If I feel that a candidate is not respecting the rules, I will kindly interrupt the candidate and redirect the conversation. All candidates for the office of State Representative District 2 were invited. The order in which the candidates are seated was determined by alphabetical order according to last name. The candidates present tonight are Mrs. Jill Dutton, Republican, and Mr. Brent Money, Republican. Each candidate will now have up to 3 minutes for opening remarks. We ask each of you to tell us about yourself and about your family's experience with Texas Public Schools. Mrs. Dutton, you go first.
I'm Jill Dutton, and I'm ready to be your next state representative. I've lived in Van Zandt County for 25 years. I'm a small business owner, a lifelong conservative Republican, a wife, a mother, and a former Van ISD school board member. I grew up in Dallas, where I went to DISD schools through 6th grade, but then I went to Dallas Christian for 7th and 8th grade and 9th through 12th. Our 3 children attended public, private, and a homeschool mixed environment. With all the different school experiences, it was our local rural public school in Van that provided the best, well-rounded educational experience for our family. Our rural public schools are the cornerstone of our communities and often the largest employers in our counties. It is where our schools rally around our kids. Our schools support our teachers and our communities. We champion the profession. Our schools pray at board meetings and athletic events. And students know and see their teachers at church on Sunday morning. Our rural schools encompass that small town value which our Lone Star State is founded. I'm proud of our public schools, our teachers, our staff, and our administrators. I cannot imagine being in a profession where every 2 years, 181 men and women change the rules and add more accountability every 2 years. After every single legislative session, I've watched you approach every mandate, test, funding challenge as an opportunity. You've taken everything the legislature has thrown at you to improve yourselves, your schools, your students, and your communities. There's a lot to be proud of and celebrate in public education. It's time to elect a state representative who will celebrate what you've accomplished, provide the support and resources that you need, and value the teachers for the heroes that you are.
Mr. Money.
Hello, my name is Brent Money. I live in Greenville, Texas. I have 5 kids, my wife and I. 3 of them are back there in the back, and we have educated our kids at public school, private school, charter school, and homeschool. My wife was educated at Campbell Public Schools, homeschool, and a Greenville Christian School where we met. When I graduated from Texas A&M Commerce with a biology degree and wasn't quite sure yet what I wanted to do with my life, I went and taught at Greenville High School for 2 years, taught high school science, 9th and 10th grade, before deciding to go into law school. And I'll talk a little bit about that experience as we go. And then from 2017 to 2019, I was a board member, and don't quote me on this, I think I was a vice president, I don't remember, doesn't matter, of Heritage Academy Charter Schools, which is a multi-campus charter school in Central Texas that I was involved with. And so I have some experience. I am not saying I have the answers. I think that in my life I have been involved in public schools. As a teacher, I know that even 20 years ago when I was teaching, sitting in the teacher's lounge and listening to the teachers who had been teaching for 20, 30 years, it just said, the kids just aren't the same today as they were back then. And while that was true, my thought at the time was kids are the same as they always are. Their parents are getting worse. We've got to figure out something to do because the school can't fix every problem that exists in a home. Well, fast forward 20 years, and those students that I was teaching have students that age. The ones that weren't being parented well, now we're another generation into it. And as I've talked with school teachers and administrators, principals, superintendents throughout this campaign, I'm shocked and heartbroken at some of the stories and some of the hurdles that you guys have to deal with. And I think there's no doubt that our system is broken. But the system is not a system that you built. It's a system you have to live in. It's a system that you have to do. But it's built by people in Austin, people running for the job that Ms. Dutton and I are running for. And so it's important that we understand where you're coming from and the hurts that you have, the pains, the obstacles you have to learning and teaching in a classroom. And I've endeavored to try to learn those things, and I hope that you'll see that tonight. But I want you to hear that I don't feel like I have all the answers. And I'm ready to continue to listen to you and to hear what you have to say so that we can create a system that puts the parents and the teachers and the local people back in charge instead of trying to fix every problem in the classroom in Austin.
Thank you both. We'll begin the question and answer part of the forum. The candidates have been notified of these questions ahead of time, and they each have up to 2 minutes to respond. The 88th regular legislative session and the additional 4 special sessions elevated numerous education policy issues at our Texas Capitol. Teacher pay, inflationary pressures, the $1.9 billion special education funding shortfall, rethinking our assessment and accountability systems, and of course, the school choice or voucher debate. Unfortunately, all of these major policy issues ended up stalling and are on hold until either a 5th called special session sometime in 2024 or the next regular session in January of 2025. Texas entered the 2023 legislative sessions with historic budget surpluses. Over $33 billion was available coming into the regular session, and after funding $18+ billion for property tax relief, the state still has $18 billion remaining after updated budget estimates. In addition, the legislature set aside $4 billion in the state budget for school funding and $500 million for vouchers that will remain untouched until legislation is passed by both chambers. Question 1. What do you think were the biggest public education accomplishments of the 88th regular session and special sessions? Mr. Money?
First of all, I don't know that there's a lot that happened in the 88th session, regular session, that virtually anybody is excited about. However, when it comes to education, not even counting the $4.5 billion that were just discussed here, the state allocated, I believe it's $6.5 billion or $6.3 billion in new education spending that is not connected to vouchers, education savings account, or anything like that. And so we have a historic investment in schools, in public schools here. There has never been a time in Texas where we have paid more money per student for an education. That does not mean that we have the best education system or the best funded education system that we've ever had, because, as you all know, there are regulations and red tape and rules that you have to abide by as educators and principals and superintendents that people didn't even think about in the 60s, 70s, or even in the early 2000s when I was a teacher. And so you continue to get unfunded mandates, then you get more funding, but it has to be tied to these things that we think are important. And so I think that it is important that we've increased funding, but I think that we have a long way to go in removing the red tape that is there. I think the TRS COLA adjustment was very, very important. My mom, who's in the audience tonight, paid into TRS for 30 years and gets most of her retirement that way. And it had been 19 years since there was any adjustment to COLA. That's a very important investment. It's something we don't need to just address every 19 years. Upgrading the instructional material so that parents have more transparency and to get it on grade level. There was so much, I've talked with Ms. Dutton.
By far, the number one accomplishment that the legislature put forth was the retired teacher cost of living adjustment. After 18 years of not having that adjustment, it was very important that that get on the ballot and that the voters of Texas voted to approve that cost of living adjustment. It is really important that TRS stays very strong and solvent. It is the strongest retirement system in Texas and quite possibly in the United States. We need to keep it a defined benefit program. We need to maintain our commitment to our retired teachers. Also, it was really, another really big accomplishment was that we received a tax compression rate in our schools for the taxpayer, but at the same time, the state supplanted that money. Unlike in 2005 when they compressed the tax rate and did not give the schools the state funding that they needed to replace that money, it was really important that they do that this year. And so I feel like that was a big accomplishment for schools. And then the school safety, Governor Abbott provided a grant money that was budgeted from the legislature, and it's providing for our schools to be safer, window tinting, barriers, a silent panic button. Those are all things that need to be in our classrooms to protect our students. But we did fall short with only 28 cents added per student. Small districts, very small districts like Como-Picton, Martins Mill, Lone Oak, they cannot afford to have a school resource officer at every single campus with just $15,000 per campus.
Question number 2 on this topic. What public education issues do you believe still need major attention? Mrs. Dutton?
Well, my number one issue is that we need to replace the STAR test. That is a punitive test, and first and foremost, we need to replace that with a norm reference test. Right now, I believe that the STAR test is probably very, very expensive, and there will be cost associated with changing that out. But we do need to change that to a norm reference test to actually measure the academic achievement of students. We also need to reform the accountability rating system. I believe in accountability. Y'all believe in accountability. Administrators believe in accountability. And us as Republicans and conservatives, we believe in accountability, and we need that in our public schools. But our A through F system is very complicated. Nobody understands it. Nobody understands how they're coming up with with the ratings in and of themselves. Sometimes a school is rated D just because they have a first, second, third grade, but they don't have a fourth grade on that campus. And so there's some minor adjustments that really can make a huge difference in that system. But if it's so complicated that we don't understand how they come up with that, then how is it that our teachers, our administrators, and even our parents are supposed to understand how those changes need to be made in our schools so that they can improve their achievements? And then also school safety, like I just mentioned. We need more school safety and more funding.
Mr. Money?
The two major responsibilities of the school and the two things that still need work are educational achievement and school safety, which are very similar. So I'll talk to you about what my vision of that is. I think that we have to recognize that the educational achievement, and I don't think anybody in this room would disagree with the fact that our students are not, as a whole, where they need to be academically. If you look at the NAEP data, only 24% of 8th graders are proficient in reading, only 23% are proficient in math. If you look at the TEA ratings, 31% are proficient in reading and math, and that's statewide. Sulphur Springs here, very good school district, it's 49%. And so you think, according to the standards, we're educating less than half of our kids at grade level when it gets to 8th grade. I don't think that's a reflection of the quality of our teachers or the quality of our administrators. I think our system, as I said, is broken. And I do think we need a complete overhaul of the accountability system. But let me explain to you what I think that needs to look like. The reason the accountability system is the way that it is right now is because right now we have a government monopoly, and where there's a monopoly, there has to be regulation and standards. Same as with utilities. The best accountability is parents who have a choice, and then we liberate the school district from all of this. I don't want private schools to have to abide by the same rules as the public schools. I want the public schools to have the same freedom and liberties that the private schools do to innovate and to respond to the needs of their parents and their community. And then with safety, the funding was very inadequate. It was maybe a step in the right direction, but we are not where we need to be with school safety.
Thank you. Question 3 on this topic. House Bill 1 by Chairman Buckley during the fourth call special session was one of the House's landmark votes on school issues. The bill contains $7.5 billion for school funding, including funds for a $2,000 to $4,000 teacher pay raise. The bill also contained a voucher provision. This voucher provision was stripped by a vote of 84 to 63, and the bill was ultimately withdrawn. What is the path forward for providing public schools and teachers with additional funding? Mr. Money.
I do not agree with tying teacher funding to education savings accounts or vouchers. That's a political move that I don't like. I like to be straight and direct and accomplish things in order. Teachers definitely need a pay raise, and you have both sides saying that the other side is holding it hostage. You're holding this hostage for that. You're holding that hostage for that. I think that each of them should stand alone on their own merits, so I would not have done that. The path forward for providing public schools additional funding, the current system, I think we have to look at the funding of the current system. Once again, we are funding at a per student rate higher than we ever have, and our educational achievement is the lowest it's ever been. We have to look at how we're allocating our dollars, and we have got to eliminate the rules and regulations and red tape that prevent you from controlling your classrooms, from getting rid of students that are causing disruption to learning and putting them, taking care of that. We've got to eliminate the focus on a test, a one-time test that is crippling to innovation and to education and trying to learn. All of my kids learn at different levels. Some of them are faster on this subject and slower on that subject. And when we say every third grader needs to be here, every fourth grader needs to be here, every fifth grader needs to be here, parents, the state expects that, but even parents don't expect that. They want their kid to be progressive. And so I want to eliminate a lot of that and allow the local school districts to allocate the funds toward the resources that they need and where they need to improve. Our budgeting is a reflection of our priorities when we have a choice on where we put it. When somebody else tells you you have to spend this money here and that money there and that money there, and you only have a teeny bit left that you can allocate, you don't get to set the priorities for your district.
Mrs. Dutton.
Texas ranks about 43rd in per pupil spending right now. Many districts have adopted a deficit budget, and many of them, after the stimulus funds run out, the COVID money runs out, many will be going to their voters for a TRE election. I believe that what we need to do is, again, replace that very expensive punitive STAR test. It is killing the teaching profession. It is killing our teachers in the classroom, that they are not able to be free to teach the profession that they went to school to learn and craft, and they care about their students, and they're not even able to spend more than one day on one particular concept or subject. And it's a very expensive test, and I believe that if we can replace that with a norm reference test that really truly measures the academic achievement throughout the school year, testing at the beginning, the middle, and the end, to see how far that they have come during that school year, to see those gains, measure them by what they've learned and gained throughout the school year, not just one day, one test, testing on material that they learned last year, the current year, and even the year that they haven't even received the instruction on yet. So we need to replace the STAR test. But we also need to cut out the unfunded and underfunded mandates. That is also driving up at the local level in our school budgets, that they are having to spend more money. I'm sure that there are a lot of things that they would love to just cut out, but they are not allowed to because it's Texas law. So, and like we've mentioned before, everyone does need to play by the same rules by accountability.
In regard to teacher workforce, prior to the last session, Governor Abbott asked the Texas Education Agency to establish a teacher vacancy task force. Texas has almost 400,000 teachers in the state. In the most recent Charles Buck Texas Teacher Statewide poll, 75% of the teachers said they were considering leaving the profession, a 20% increase from just 3 years ago. One of the top priorities for the next legislative session should be how our schools attract, retain, and train our Texas teacher workforce. The question is, what do you think is the largest obstacle for schools in attracting and retaining our teachers, whether it be pay, workplace culture, overemphasis on state testing, and what can be done at the state level to fix some of these pressing issues? Mrs. Dutton.
Well, first and foremost, our teachers need support in their classrooms. I have a friend whose daughter went into the teaching profession just 2 years ago, and now she's out. She couldn't do it anymore. She was teaching at a school district that's very close to Dallas, and the students' behavior in the classroom was atrocious, and she was not getting the support that she needed from the parents. And so that's one of the number one things that I think teachers need is a climate of support in the classroom, not just from their administrators and from the parents, but also from their legislators and representatives in Austin. We need a strong TRS system that I mentioned before. We have a very strong solvent system. We also need to work with our congressman in Washington to end the GPO in retirement, where teachers are not able to draw from their Social Security and their TRS. It's their money. We need to replace the STAR, which I've already mentioned, and reform the accountability rating system. I think those four would help attract teachers to the profession. Again, the STAR test is killing the teaching profession. No one wants to go into this profession knowing that they're going to have to give this STAR test and have their students go through that kind of stress. The parents are going through that kind of stress. Our middle child, our daughter, as a junior in high school, decided she was done with the STAR test. She wasn't going to do it anymore. And so she researched on her own a homeschool mixed charter school environment, and we allowed her to do that because she just was not going to do it anymore. She was number 3 in her class at Van ISD. She loved her school, she loved her friends, but she was done with that STAR. And I believe that there's a lot of students and parents that are done as well.
Mr. Money.
The number one thing is for any type of retention and recruitment is always going to be pay. And that, I wish it wasn't so. I'm a business owner myself, but in order to attract good people to a job, you have to pay. And there was a nursing shortage when my wife was a young nurse. And the reason there was a nursing shortage is because we weren't paying nurses enough. And so hospitals had to adjust. And I think that when you look at the crippling inflation that all of us are dealing with, especially post-COVID, it is hard on businesses, it is hard on school districts, it is hard on any employer to keep and retain, to recruit and retain good people because of pay. So we have to figure out a way to compensate teachers more. That doesn't necessarily mean we need to just pour more money into the system. We can save money by eliminating a lot of the accountability, the testing, and the rules and regulations that we have both talked about. And when I was in high school, I think it was the TOS test. When I was teaching, it was the tax test. The problem isn't the test needs to be tweaked here. We need a different kind of test. I mean, everybody, I think, agrees we need some kind of measuring stick, but that measuring stick should be a measuring stick that tells the parents and the teacher where that student is, not tells everyone else where the school district is. That's not fair. It's way too much. It's way too much focus on any one test. The other thing that we need to do, we've got to take care of classroom discipline. Teachers can't be the first disciplinarian that 25 kids have ever seen in their life, and we have to figure out a way to do that. Once again, creating an environment where we empower parents helps to fix that.
School safety is one of the biggest priorities of our schools. During the 88th regular session, House Bill 2, which requires at least one armed security officer to be present during regular school hours at each district campus, provided a funding provision that increased the existing allotment from $9.72 per student to $10 per student, and provided an additional $15,000 per campus. The question is, have you talked with your school districts or campus principals about how this new provision is being implemented and what else needs to be done to help keep our schools safe? Mr. Money?
Yes, I've talked with several principals and superintendents about this. For small school districts, well, it doesn't matter what size your school district is. $15,000 is not enough to hire someone, and an extra 17 cents in allotment per student isn't there. And so basically what happens is another mandate that we are not going to provide all the funding for. You have to figure out where it is. And I am not going to sit here and tell you that I am familiar enough with your budget to know where that money should come from. But what I do know is it's a burden. We need to keep kids safe. Everyone agrees to that. I don't know that having one officer per campus means, okay, now kids are safe. It certainly helps. It's safer. But I also don't think we want a school district, regardless of money, where there's just armed officers everywhere and make it look like they're prison wardens. And so we have a societal problem here. We have a cultural breakdown that our schools aren't safe. We've always had kids. We've always had kids in schools. We've always had guns. But suddenly we have a major, major problem. And once again, the school is reflective of our society as a whole, what it is today and what it's going to be. And it's a reflection. It can do some to mold and shape, but it can't fix everything that's wrong. And we need to quit asking our students, our teachers and our principals to fix everything that's wrong at home. And we have to have a system that allows them to put that back on the parent. When I was a kid, in my classes, if the kid was acting up too much, you send them home. They take care of it. If they don't take care of it, the parent has to come and sit in the class with the kid until the kid learns to behave. That usually fixes things for the rest of the semester.
Mrs. Dutton?
Our rural schools are probably the most vulnerable as far as safety. Law enforcement in our rural areas are underfunded as well, and they are understaffed. And it takes a good 20, 30, 45 minutes. I know that it takes at least 45 minutes to an hour to drive from one side of my county to the other. And I was extremely proud to be on the school board when we passed our Guardian program at Van ISD. We were one of the first in the state to do that. And the Guardian program is one where you identify a list of teachers and administrators and even school personnel that are trained and they're been taught and licensed to carry and conceal on campus and at school athletic events and other events, extracurricular. And we were really proud to do that. And we did that on our own, mostly because of funding, because we couldn't afford, in a small school district, couldn't afford a school resource officer that's armed at every single campus. I believe that the latest school safety mandate at only $15,000 per school resource officer, again, that's not enough. It's an underfunded mandate. And I believe that each school district should be able to make that decision for themselves. It's a local, community level decision that should have been made, and they could choose to do a Guardian program or to pay for a school resource officer. However, many of the schools around the state have already done that. They have put in barriers so that cars cannot ram into the front doors. They have put in several layers to get in, the silent buzzers, things like that, silent panic buttons, window tinting, fencing. All of those are important, and I'm very thankful that the governor had provided the Texas grant for that.
In regard to assessment and accountability, there have been a lot of discussion about the overemphasis on tests in recent years. Our current A through F accountability system is entirely based on STAR to rate our schools at the elementary and middle school levels. In February, the Travis County District Court will decide whether or not to allow TEA to move forward on new college, career, military readiness rules that will drastically impact the overall ratings of campuses and school districts. The question is, should our accountability system be so dependent on the STAR or any standardized test, and what factors of school quality would you like to see included when rating our public schools? Mrs. Dutton.
Well, I think that you guys know by now that I am not a fan of the STAR test, and I do not think that the accountability rating system should be heavily put on a single punitive STAR test like that. But we do need to measure some of that accountability based on academic achievement through a norm reference testing. Often our schools are already doing those academic achievement tests in their schools right now because they want to know where their students are beginning and where they have ended throughout the school year so that they know how to help those students. And it should definitely be part of the accountability rating. But I also believe, again, in empowering our parents and empowering our communities, that they decide a lot of what their academic and school ratings should be based on. What's important to their communities? Academics, absolutely, because that's what we're there for. But there's often a lot of other issues that go into a community and to a school. And again, we need to return a lot of these decisions back to the local level. School districts are called independent school districts, but yet our independent school districts only have about a 5 to 10% decision-making ability at their schools. So part of my solution is to allow our schools and our communities to make some of those decisions of what goes into their accountability ratings. Rural school districts are often hit the hardest when it comes to accountability ratings because they lack a lot of the resources and the funding that they need to meet and achieve a lot of these goals. Like I just mentioned, at Van ISD, they received a D rating at one of their campuses because they had one school year with 15 English as a second language students that did not do well that year, but it's mainly because they don't have a fourth grade at that first, second, and third grade campus. So they are going to have to reorganize their entire campus school district in order to be able to bring that up.
Mr. Money.
As I've said before, I would like a complete overhaul of the accountability system. Does anybody know what the top university in the state of Texas is? Or the worst university in the state of Texas? You know how Texas A&M Commerce compares to Baylor, or Austin College compares to Texas A&M? No. You study it, you figure out which one's best for you, for the program that you want. You talk with professors, you go to the campus, you look around and get a feel, you talk with friends who have been there, family members who have gone there, and you choose what's best for you and your family. Why can parents not do that in elementary school, in middle school, in high school? The reason that we have an accountability system is because we have a monopoly. We say, you have to go there and we'll make sure it works for you. Right now, it's not working for way too many students. Not because the schools are not doing a good job, but because it's an impossible system. And so, when we had school choice when I was a kid, and when I was going into 9th grade, my parents said, hey, would you like, you want to go into science? Would you like to go to Greenville High School? They have a lot better science program. We went there. We talked with the science teacher. We looked at the lab. Wow, look at all of this stuff. This is really great. We looked at the curriculum. And ultimately decided that I wanted to stay in a Christian environment and where I could play sports, because I wasn't good enough to play sports in public school. We made a decision that was best for us. Every kid, every parent should have that opportunity, regardless of their income status, not just based on that. And that's the best accountability that we can possibly have. So I would eliminate the system. The system has been very punitive on districts close to us, the Greenville district in particular, where I taught. Fantastic kids come out of Greenville ISD every single year. Fantastic kids who achieve among the best in the world. But we have a poor system because certain criteria aren't met to meet certain, certain criteria aren't met. It's not a fair system. You can't make it fair. It's fundamentally unfair.
In regard to state funding and the state budget, the legislature has held state funding levels for schools without any increase to the basic allotment since 2019. Double-digit inflation over the past 4 years has placed pressure on our schools. This school year, federal stimulus funding runs out and must be obligated if there is any remaining in the school's account. The question is, have you talked to your school districts about what they are doing with their federal stimulus funds? If so, how are they using those funds to address learning loss? And what are schools going to do once these stimulus funds run out? Mr. Money?
I haven't talked to every school district, but I haven't found one yet that the stimulus funds have not run out or will run out during this school year. And so the idea, I guess, was to allow interventions to catch people up from the time that they miss. But the administrators that I've talked to have already had to start cutting back on tutors and programs and personnel because the funding is gone. So I think that we're at the end of the stimulus funds. The other part of the question was, what are schools going to do once the stimulus funds run out? They have to make cuts to academic programming that they shouldn't have to make. And this is a good. Another thing that I think that is impacting a lot of school districts is this SHARS federal funding, the Medicaid reimbursement. That apparently, from what I've talked with, the audit that was just done has completely changed the rules, and a lot of school districts that were counting on about 2% of their budget coming from this Medicaid reimbursement for providing non-educational kind of medical care for students they've gone back and said, hey, we've been doing it wrong all of this time, and you're going to have to repay this money. In some cases, there's some school districts that are having to pay money back to the federal government. In almost every case, after the budget has already been set, and they were counting on about 2% of their budget coming from the federal government, the government said, no, that's not it. You're not going to get 2%. You're going to get about a tenth of that or a 20th of that. And so there's a major funding gap, and I think a lot of our districts with the federal stimulus funds and then the SHARS funding are operating at a deficit right now.
Ms. Dutton?
So along with that federal stimulus funds also came mandates. And at first, those mandates were that if a student failed the STAR test, they had to have 30 hours of intervention tutoring. Well, thank goodness the state legislature came back and lowered that to 15 hours. That's still a lot of hours. And that's still a lot of time that teachers had to take out of their day, and it couldn't be with the regular population of students in the classroom. So schools often had to hire aides and additional teachers just to meet the federal stimulus mandate. But kudos to a lot of the superintendents that may actually be in this room right now. Some of them took that money, they supplanted it into their budget, and they're using it, and they're working toward saving up so that they can continue those interventions in the future. But if it runs out, they're going to have to cut those programs. But some other superintendents have actually put that into their fund balance to save that money and working toward keeping those programs because they wanted to see if this is actually successful, we want to keep doing it. especially if we keep the STAR. But hopefully, if we can get rid of the STAR test, that won't be as big of an issue. But students are always going to need interventions, but we need to make these interventions for students realistic for teachers and personnel, and that it's not something that's going to take time out of the classroom and then be so arduous that it's nearly impossible for school districts to meet those needs and mandates.
The second question on this topic. The state currently has a budget surplus of at least $18 billion with an additional $23.7 billion in the rainy day fund. What are your funding priorities for public education next session or during any called special session? Mrs. Dutton.
Well, first of all, the formula funding system is very, very complicated, and I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm an expert by any means, but I definitely understand it more than most people. I'm not sure that everyone understands or realizes this, but school districts are funded quite differently than other government bodies here in the state of Texas. School districts assess a tax rate based on appraisals, but oftentimes those tax rates are pulling from the local level, but they are not enough to fund our entire school budgets. So the state of Texas historically had kicked in about 50% of those school budgets. Over the last 15 years, the state of Texas has reduced their kicking in or their portion of the school district's budgets to around 30 to 40%, putting more and more burden on the local taxpayer. So at the local level of school districts, they are actually penalized for reducing their tax rate. So if they tax at the highest rate possible that the state of Texas tells them that they need to tax, they will get the maximum amount of state funding to help with their school budgets. But if they lower those tax rates below a certain level, they actually are penalized and their state funding is reduced. Well, with the additional unfunded and underfunded mandates, this is putting more and more of a stress and burden on the local taxpayer. So the better that we fund our schools, the better that we can fund our schools from the state, the less burden it will be on our local taxpayers.
Mr. Money.
Actually, for the first time in many years, the state is now funding over half of the M&O rate, and I'm not saying that's enough. We need to continue to do that. So I would continue to use budgetary surpluses to pay down that M&O rate and put more of that burden on the state than on the local. I would not touch the rainy day fund for anything that's operational. I don't think it's good. It's good fiscal policy to use fund balance or savings for ongoing operational costs, and so I wouldn't do that. There may be some capital expenditures that need to be done. If we need to make one-time safety improvements at campuses or things like that, that's something I could be open to. But in general, I don't spend savings on operations. I think we need to sit down with the education code and just start slashing away at it more than we need to add things into. And I'd love to sit down with some superintendents, board members, teachers in the room and work through what those laws and rules and regulations do to you on a day-to-day or year-to-year basis, because I think that's where we can find some common ground and some freedom to liberate the school districts to do what you really want to do, instead of having to spend so much time on state compliance and reporting and accountability and things like that. Just teach the kids. This is what you've been trained for. This is what your passion is. It's what you're good at. Just do it. And if you're not doing it well enough, your school board will let you know. The parents will let you know. And changes and adjustments will be made. You don't need a bureaucrat in Austin reading a report to see whether or not you handle that disciplinary issue correctly. And so, from a funding standpoint, you can look at the overall amount of funding and say things need to change, but I'd like to look at specifically where the money that's already been spent is going.
In regard to pre-kindergarten education, during the 85th legislative session in 2019, Texas made great strides to increase funding for pre-kindergarten instruction, expanding the amount of money qualifying enrolled for full-day pre-kindergarten. Yet Texas still does not have a universal pre-K system in place to provide free pre-kindergarten for all students who apply for public school education. The question is, would you support increasing funding and opening up admittance for all students to participate in full-day pre-kindergarten? If yes or no, why? Mr. Money.
This is a very, very difficult situation because I think I know the heart of the people who want to do this. You look and say, when kids come in to pre-K, there is one study I saw shows like a 3 million word gap from the number of words that kids from certain homes have heard than others. And that's a vocabulary gap that's really, really hard to ever match. And so you think, well, man, if we could get those kids that are struggling out of the homes earlier and into an environment where they can learn and hear, then that would be a big improvement. I'm just always going to side on kids need more from their parents and not less. And so we need to empower parents. We need to expect more from our parents. I think that it's fine for there to be programs available for pre-kindergarten, but I would like to. I would not be in favor of making that universal and making it. Certainly, would agree to making it mandatory. I would love to learn more about it from some of you that may hold different views, but we need more parents to be parents and quit expecting the school district to be a cradle-to-grave solution for society. It just can't do that, and that's not going to result in the kind of society that I want for my children and my grandchildren. And so we have a long way to go, but we need to help those parents who are doing a great job, and those teachers that are doing a great job, and those principals and superintendents that are doing great jobs, to be able to do that more free from restriction. And we need to push it back on the parents that aren't doing as well to do that.
Mrs. Dutton.
Yes, but only for those who qualify. We have schools right now across the state that are being funded by half-day pre-kindergarten, but they are providing the full day already, and that's what I'm talking about. Those are the schools that need to be funded. The reason that they are providing that full day is because the students who qualify for pre-K are the absolute poverty level. Those parents cannot afford, and they're mostly not able to drop their child off mid-morning and pick them up mid-afternoon. So therefore, the schools are already providing that all-day pre-kindergarten for those families right now, but they are only being funded for half-day. So I'm in favor of increasing the funding for those schools who qualify right now.
Thank you. Each candidate will now have 2 minutes for closing statements. Since Mrs. Dutton was first in the opening remarks, Mr. Money will be first in the closing.
I'd like to thank all you for coming and for spending time listening to us explain what our views are on these very important issues. And I hope that you heard from me a willingness to learn, to listen. I'm always going to side on giving parents and local school districts more control, more power, and having Austin stay out of the business of educating kids. The job of the state legislature should primarily be to provide adequate funding, not to regulate your classroom, regulate your building, regulate your transportation, regulate everything about how you run your campus. We also have to be mindful that not in these districts, hopefully, but in some other districts, people are doing crazy things, indoctrinating kids with harmful ideology that it has no place in a school. And so as a legislature, you do want to step in and say, hey, you can't do that. And so it's a balance to figure out what things can we do and what things shouldn't we do. But we do need to have adequate funding release you from the restrictions. I think the burden that you feel every day to do your job, the reason 75% of teachers are considering a different profession, it's not just about money. I think most of those 75%, if you said we're going to increase $10,000 per year, that would help. But they don't like having to go out and buy supplies for their classroom. How about teacher spending accounts that allow people, if they need some extra? How about a curriculum that makes sense? How about just getting the troublemakers out of my classroom so that I can teach? That's what I got into this for the students, so that I can teach. So I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Mrs. Dutton.
Thank you, Raise Your Hand Texas and Sulphur Springs ISD, for organizing this forum and having us here tonight. It is important that we elect the right representative for House District 2. Public schools are the cornerstone and often the largest employer in our communities. But more importantly, public education is the single largest recipient of the state's budget each year. Therefore, it's imperative we elect a representative who understands its funding, who understands its importance in our communities, who celebrates your accomplishments, and understands education's current and future needs. I am that candidate because I have walked through and experienced challenges that I turned into opportunities. When Van ISD's budget was cut $2 million because of a state budget shortfall, Van ISD took inventory of our priorities, cut the budget, and put students first. In a previous response to a school shooting, we were one of the first districts in the state to implement the Guardian program. When Van ISD needed to improve K-3 reading scores, we turned it into an opportunity to involve our church and community leaders. I started the Literacy Partners program, matching students with volunteers to read together once a week. When parents felt their concerns were not heard, I utilized the School Health Advisory Council to turn a concerned parent into an involved parent. And when Van ISD was hit by an F4 tornado, Van ISD board responded with an opportunity, asking our voters and taxpayers permission to add classroom space and build a career and technology center. This opportunity has provided certificates and careers in at the high school level for vet tech, pharmacy tech, and carpentry. I am the candidate who cares about public education, who listens to public education, who puts students first, and who takes challenges and turns them into opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes our candidate forum. Thank you both for participating, and let's show our gratitude to the candidates for their participation. At this time, we'll finish our program with a few words from Deanne Lee with Raise Your Hand Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Burney, for serving as our moderator this evening, and Ms. Colby for serving as timekeeper. Thank you again, candidates, for your participation and willingness to serve the people of Texas. Thanks to each of you present in this room and later online to take the time to become informed. Please feel free to visit the candidates' tables, and please pick up your Raise Your Hand Texas yard signs and other swag on your way out. Also, if you don't mind, sign in at the table at the front. That helps us know about attendance and is appreciated. Every legislative session is an education session. Your vote does matter. Remember that early voting for this special election starts Monday, January 22nd, and runoff election day is Tuesday, January 30th. Thank you, and good night.